Okay, so in the previous tutorial we have seen how we can rotate our worker character towards resource, and now let's see um, how we can trigger harvesting resources once the worker class or worker instance has been reached to a specific resource building or a specific resource space. So currently you can see that our worker is moving towards to this specific resource, but after reaching to this resource he's not doing anything, right? He's simply remaining idle pause. But instead of that, what we have to do, we have to trigger some animation to showcase that this guy is harvesting this resource, and after that that resource should be carried out to this specific resource building, right? So that's the whole idea. So first let's create maybe blueprint interface type to call this sort of functionality, right? So I'll create a folder called interfaces, and over there I'll create a blueprint interface called API worker, and as the first function I'll use this as arrived at resource, and maybe I'll assign a category called worker, right? And as the input we can give what the natural resource that we reached. So let's say reached resource, and we can implement that blueprint interface at our BP worker base. So let's implement that interface, and yeah, maybe I'll collapse this function as well, and I'll name this as move to resource. Actually, this is the function that we have been created in the previous tutorials. So I collapsed it because then our event graph is much more organized. Okay, so once you implement the interface, under the interfaces section you may able to see this function. So again, these sort of interface ideas come from the object oriented paradigm. Basically, by using these sort of interfaces we can instantiate different types of implementations behind that specific interface, right? So for example, let's say a specific worker class may have some X functionality under this interface. Likewise, another worker instance may have some sort of Y functionality based on the same interface, right? So let's try to implement this event, right? And these sort of interfaces can be overridden by the child instances as well, right? But for now, let's create a generic interface implementation, and later on we can customize those stuff accordingly, right? So once we reach to a specific resource, and if it is a valid thing, we have to stop moving our character, right? Stop movement immediately, and for the testing purposes I will simply print a hello world, right? And I'll close all the unnecessary tabs, and we have to go to our behavior tree again, and once we reach to the specific target location, we are at this stage, which is the finished execution stage, and we have to notify we have been arrived to our location, right? So we pass a message to this specific worker, right? And the reached resource is basically this current target resource, right? So maybe I can name it as current target resource and pass it over here. And that message will be received by this specific interface. It will trigger this function, right? So let's try the testing with the lumber. So I'll disable this barn and mine for the simplicity. And let's try to simulate it again. So yeah, our worker is moving towards to the resource, and once it reached, you can see it keep printing hello world, right? Yeah. So yeah, maybe we can abort this execution and let's see whether it is aborting. Okay. Yeah, it's still keep printing hello world. Yeah, maybe not over here, but later on actually we can change the state, change the worker state to a different stage. So it will eventually prevent executing this path, right? Because we are executing this path whenever we have moving towards resource worker state, right? So we can maybe change this worker state to the waiting, so then this execution path won't be get triggered, right? But yeah, we can do that later on. So yeah, so now we has been reached to this specific target location. Then what we have to do, we can start harvesting, right? So I will create maybe a new function, custom function called start harvesting, right? And maybe I'll collapse this node as harvesting, right? And move it up over here, and let's go inside that collapse nodes. Yeah, so and in over here now we can set our worker state to the harvesting stage, right? And at the harvesting stage we need to play some animation to showcase that this guy is harvesting that specific resource, right? So in order to do that, I will create a montage list, right? So maybe harvesting montages, right? And these are anim montage list, and I'll assign this to a category called maybe setup and make it instant readable as well. Okay, so if you go to the props and RTS game starter kit, low poly assets, characters and animations, here you can see that we have a set of animations, and if you click this this chopping tree animation, so this is the animation related to a lumber, right? Likewise, this anim mining as well as anim plucking are the relevant harvesting resources, harvesting related animations for specific work instance, right? So let's create an anim montage based on this thing. So create any montage. I'll keep it as like this, and then yeah, so it's playing under the default slot group. And so I will first globally assign this any montage for each worker, right? So all of them are playing the same animation, and later on we will override this animation based on each worker type, right? So for now, let's assign this anim chopping tree, and yeah, so maybe we can play this anim montage over here directly for the testing purposes. So I will simply get some random array item and play that anim montage over here like this. Okay. And yeah, this should work, right? And yeah, we should call this start harvesting function once we reached to this specific point, right? So start harvesting, and also we should be calling this function only at once, right? So it should print hello world only once if it's working properly. So let's check it. Okay, it's moving, and yeah, it's printing hello but only once, which is correct, but it's not playing any sort of animation. That's because of we haven't specifically say our animation graph to play these sort of montages, right? So if you go to the characters, animation, and anim BP character base, under the anim graph we only uh, output this output pose, right? um, so instead of that, actually what we have to do is we have to tell this animation graph to catch the montage pose, and then if we occur and montage, play that accordingly, right? On top of this locomotion animation, right? So we can do that actually. First we can catch this pose, and I'll call this as locomotion pose cache, right? So this is with respect to the locomotion. Okay, and can use this locomotion catch pose and select the default slot as the slot we are going to play our montages, and again we can save this cache. So I'll name this as montage pose cache. So currently we are saving our montage cache as the full body, right? We are not manipulating a specific bone, skeleton bone. Therefore the entire montage will be applied to the entire skeleton of this character, right? So which is a full body montage. So I'll name this as montages full body, and then as the final pose we can use this montage pose sketch, and this will become the final pose. Okay, and if I compile it now, okay, everything works properly. You can see how the execution hierarchy goes, right? So animations are blending with the montages before applying as the output pose, right? So now I think it should work. So let's try to simulate. Okay, it's moving to target, and yeah, here you can see it played that montage at once, right? But actually it is not what we need. We need to play that montage for a period of time before uh, you know maybe like a loop. um, so we can do that actually. If I go to that specific function, so instead of manually playing this animation only at once, maybe at the character base I will create another function to playing such montage animations, right? um, so at the event graph, maybe I'll create a function called or event called play random montage. So, and this basically take any montage list as an input, and I'll name this as montages, and I'll create a variable to state whether we are playing a montage currently or not. um, so whenever we execute this function, it will start playing the montage, and if we are playing the montage, that's it. Other than that, we can set montage play as 0, and if we are playing the montage, we can get a random array item and set it as, or promote it to a variable as current any montage, and then we can play that any montage like this, and after that we are waiting some delay after this function, after this montage is played. Maybe we can directly stay this time, or we can add some displacement such as 0.2 and wait that time and execute this thing again. So I'll add a reroute node over here and attach this to here, right? So yeah, so whenever I execute this thing, it always play this animation, right? This specific random montage, right? And I had to explicitly say to stop that play, right? Otherwise this loop will go forever. So in order to do that, let's create another custom event called stop random montage. So this should make this montage play variable as false, and it should stop this specific any montage that is being playing, right? And yeah, simply this should work, right? Okay, so I'll comment this to function as maybe montages, and then under the BP worker base, instead of manually feeding our play animation like this, let's use that play random montage function. And now if I compile, save and simulate it again, you will see the worker is moving towards the resource and he is keep harvesting, right? So that animation is keep play over and over again without reaching for that single loop. Okay, and yeah, so I think that's how we can play the harvesting animation once we reach to that specific location. Actually we can override for the other worker classes as well, so maybe let's try to active them. Okay, and let's try to simulate it again. But here you can see that the farming girl as well as the farmer are playing the same animation, and if you check the miner which is working over here, he's playing the same animation, right? Which is not what we intended to do. Instead of that, what we need to do is we have to play a specific animation for each of these work instances. So actually we can do that, but first we have to create the respective montages for those harvesting related animation. So for the mine, actually we can use this anim mining, and also for the farming girl we can use this anim plucking. Okay, and then instead of manually feeding that specific anim montage globally within this list, we can go for each worker instance like this, and we can override that specific value. So on the setup, here we have that tree chopping animation montage, but for the farmer we should have a plucking montage, and for the lumber we have this chopping tree montage which is 5, and for the miner we should assign any mining montage. So let's compile and save everything and simulate it again. Now you will see, okay, so now the miner is actually playing that mining animation, right, instead of that chopping tree animation. Likewise, farming girl is playing that fruit harvesting animation, right, which is nice. And as usual, our farmer is playing that tree chopping animation, right, instead of playing other animations, right. So now you can see each and every individual different workers are playing their own respective animation montages instead of playing the same animation. And yeah, we haven't created separate functions for that. All we have to do is override this parent variable inside each and every individual child classes. Okay, so in the next tutorial we'll see how we can further improve this thing, maybe by spawning harvesting tools, and maybe harvesting the resource values as well, right, like numerical value. Okay, so we'll see those stuff in future tutorials, and yeah, thank you, see you in the next video.